All right, hello. Welcome to a Sunday live stream. A bit late because I just got back from a weekend away with some family. So nice to see those who've joined super early. So it's very nice of you. And today's agenda is covering the new rules we've just received. So definitely it's time to be playing 40k and also Astra Militarum. Despite the fact we just had a significant nerf, there's a lot of good stuff coming for Astra Militarum. So love it or loathe it. We've got some new rules you can play for elite infantry. And then, of course, obviously the new codex with all the Def Core models is coming in January or February. So it is overall a good time to be playing Astra Militarum. Lots of new stuff is coming out. Yes, we just got a pretty heavy nerf, but I think we deserved it, regardless of the type of game you play, because overall Guard was in a very, very good winning position. So let's look at the new detachment. So as always, before I start, I cover everything Astra Militarum, this channel, from everything from the lore aspect, tabletop tactics, taking a casual but competitive approach to 40k, and also building, assembling, and kit bashing videos. So nice to see everyone. So hello, Chosen Man Bo Smith, Star Captain, good to see you, Toshiba, and Will, nice to see you, mate. So thanks all for joining. So let's get into these new exciting rules. So for Christmas has come early. We're very lucky we've got a new detachment rule for Astra Militarum. So for those of you that don't know, in case you don't, we've basically got two now, the combined regiment, whatever it's officially called in the index, and now this. So let's look at this carefully and always take careful note of the wording, because it's something I often miss, and this is where we can sort of really juice this sponge, understand what this detachment will give us. So I haven't read the lore, but basically it's going to be some super whizzy, like elite dudes and ladies. So it kicks off with only the best. Very, very nice name. So each time an Astra Militarum infantry model from your army makes a ranged attack roll wants to hit. Okay, so firstly, all Astra Militarum infantry models. Yeah, so at first glance, if you just focus in on think this is about Scions, this rule means literally nothing, because Scions already have this rule, yeah? The Tempestus Scions, every roll wants to hit, or 4 rerolls every opponent unit on an objective. So do take careful note. This is all Astra Militarum infantry. So that obviously encompasses all battle line, Kazkin, Scions, obviously, Rattlings, Ogrins, all the indirect infantry-based units like heavy weapon teams, field ordnance batteries, Medusas, and Earthshake carriage batteries, as much as they're probably going to be delisted soon, the new codex. All your characters, all the battle line, obviously. So this weirdly, very weirdly, actually is a bit of a weird buff in the sense every single infantry unit gets real ones to hit. And that crucially means, I think the key contender here will be Ogrins. So maybe now they can't be ordered by Lord Solar or anybody else. That removes a lot of utility from them. But now they get real ones to hit. Essentially, the ballistic skill is ballistic skill 3.5, if you know what I mean. It's like ballistic skill 4+ real ones to hit. You're basically hitting on a 3.5. Yeah, very, very basic explanation of Math Hammer. Weirdly, also, it is a weird semi-buff to indirect infantry units, which I spoke about. Heavy weapon teams, field ordnance batteries, Earthshake carriage battery, and the Medusa. So given it has no stipulation, you need to see the units, the targets. Indirect now essentially is hitting on a 3.5, yeah, because you get real ones to hit. Obviously, you give them an order, so they're hitting on 4s. Real ones to hit, you are actually hitting on a 3.5, yeah, because you're all to hit. So this weirdly is a bit of a weird. It's obviously it's not as powerful as lethal hits, but given that Ogrins never had lethal hits, Rattlings didn't have lethal hits. Gaunt's Ghosts didn't have lethal hits. This actually is I try to do a bit of Math Hammer and try and work it out, but I think actually mathematically lethal hits is superior real ones to hit in the hit roll. But broadly speaking, it is kind of buffing a lot of other units that aren't buffed by the combined arm regiment with lethal hits. So do keep that in mind, because I think it actually will give us when it comes to list design, and we'll sort of talk about it a little bit, it gives you actually a bit more flexibility in your first think. So I think the key one, obviously, I think is, indirect infantry units will get real ones to hit, and also battle line. I mean, battle line is still really good. OC2, it's still cheap. Yeah, it's got more expensive, but it's still cheap. And yes, not getting lethals into non-monsters and vehicles, but against everything they're shooting at, you're getting extra hits. So it is something, okay? Let me check the chat for any commentary so far. I want to get everyone's perspective. I have you coming in 5x5 comments. Very good. Thank you, Bo Smith. Cool. Okay, next on to the next part. So Fire Zone Purge. Each time Militarum Tempestus model from Army makes a ranged attack in a turn in which it was set up on the battlefield from reserves or disembarked from a transport, add 1 to the wound roll. Okay, so again, being very careful of the wording. Militarum Tempestus basically is all of the existing data sheets. Yeah, so you've got Militarum Tempestus for the command squad, you've got Militarum Tempestus for Scions, Aquilons, and also the Militarum. Oh, interesting. I thought the Taurox Prime had it, but it doesn't. So the Taurox Prime doesn't have Militarum Tempestus. It doesn't have it. So that doesn't qualify. So basically, it's 3 data sheets which get this, yeah? Now, it's obviously Command Squad, Scion Blokes, and the Aquilons. Right, so that's a 3 models that benefit from this. Now, the next part, obviously, ranged attacks in a turn in which was set up from a battlefield, on the battlefield from reserves or disembark. So that crucially means if it's the turn, not the round, if you rapid ingress Tempestus Scions or Tempestus Aquilons, they don't get this, yeah, because this is the turn, not the round. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind, is if you do rapid ingress the 15-man Death Blob, which is a critical play used to do a lot with the current index attachment, you don't get this. Yeah, so what this is basically pointing to is that when you basically, you're going to have like one big go turn, and you want to basically remove as much as possible, yeah, because if you're not coming in from deep strike or not disembarking from a transport, Taurox Prime potentially, you're not getting the +1 to wound. So this crucially, obviously, will tip the special weapons into wounding heavy vehicles on a 4, yeah? Because a melter is a 9, a plasma pistol, plasma weapon, a plasma gun is a strength 8. Against heavy vehicles, let's say strength 10 and upwards, you're wounding on 5s, and that is absolutely dog poo. That mathematics is terrible. But hitting on 4s is somewhat more stomachable. And given, and this is where we can talk about a couple of combinations, that given this probably will be occurring mostly on a 15-man Death Blob with a command squad, given you're going to get real 1s automatically now, and plus Scions already have that. And if you're hitting the right target, if a vehicle's on an objective, you get 4 rerolls, and you can play around with orders. We'll come into that in a second. So if you did a 15-man blob, it gives front rank fire, second rank fire. That's going to be a boatload of plasma shots. You give them +1 to hit, reroll 1. Suddenly, you're going to basically get every single hit on target, and you get some sustained hits as well. So going into the wound roll, you should have a lot of wounds going into the target, yeah? So that's where +1 to wound, when you've got basically, let's assume all of your plasmas hit, you get some sustained hits. Let's pretend you go in there with 10 hits. You're gonna land at least 5 of those to wound mathematically. Yeah, wounding on 4s because of the +1 to wound. Obviously, your melter as well. That's where you want to make sure you're obviously wounding. And given you can take 3, that means you're going to be taking into the wound roll 3 of those, maybe 4 if you get a sustained. And suddenly now the Death Blob of 15 dudes should pick up some vehicles. Now, if we just engineer and try and think about, would it pick up a Lehman Russ battle tank? 13 wounds, as I said, let's say 5 of those wounds, and then saving on 5s. You're probably going to put through about 8 wounds, mathematically speaking. And then crucially, all it will take is 1 melter to hit, and suddenly you just popped a Lehman Russ, which would be beautiful. And getting into melter range, which is important, obviously, we can actually do. We'll discuss in a second as well. So this is actually looking quite nice. It also obviously means that all of the hotshot weapons, las guns, where their strength 3 wounding on 5s, means against pretty much all elite infantry. All infantry you're wounding on 4s there, yeah? So this suddenly is a bit of a force multiplier. Now, being crucial of this, is this as powerful as lethal hits? I'll have to run some pretty complex math hammer, but I would probably say no. Although, as we look into some combinations in a second, it might actually be just as good. Let me just let my cat out. He's come back in from probably trying to catch some mice. Okay, by next. Cool. Okay, and the next part, which is actually super, super cool to see, is then if you make a Militarum Tempestus a Tempestus Prime, your Warlord or Scions gain battle line. Okay, that was no different to what they currently had. But the crucial thing is they then become OC2, which I think they should have always had. And this actually suddenly makes Scions really, really good. Yeah, because OC2 is fantastic. Give them an order, suddenly it's OC3. That's ridiculous. And obviously, as you know, if you take a Scion blob with a banner, and then that's +1, so that's suddenly OC3 per model, give them an order OC4. It's frankly ridiculous. You out OC everything in the game with just probably 5 dudes. Yeah, you got OC20. So this is actually really good, really good. Now, again, if we just sort of step back, is this as powerful as lethal hits on vehicles, lethal hits on regiments? And I don't think it is, particularly because there's nothing here buffing vehicles at all. And there is a stratagem, if you haven't seen it, which does do that. But I think the raw power of the current index detachment rule will provide more damage power than this will. Yeah, you can definitely engineer scenarios where you could probably reliably be taking tanks down with this combination here. And the combination basically, as you know, it would be, well, either the 15-man blob for sustained hits or a 10-man blob busting out of a Taurox, where obviously you get reroll the wound roll as well here. Yeah, so that actually, and given your debussing, you get +1 to the wound roll, so you're winning vehicles on 4s, you're getting rerolls on the wound roll. Again, you probably are going to be, again, from that mathematical makeup of let's say 10 plasma hits, you're suddenly going to be getting 6, yeah, because you're rerolling the hit roll, winning on 4s. So, you know, and this then sort of skews into the type of list you need to be thinking to building, yeah, because we've got reroll 1s on all infantry, and again, that could be Ogrim. Suddenly they're good with the Ripper guns. Battle line is suddenly obviously a bit better. A lot of stuff, but I think where the power really comes into it is obviously going to be here, and OC2 Scions. Now, crucially, Tempestus Scions, not Tempestus Aquilans, because obviously they don't have the Scion keyword. They've got the Tempestus Aquilan word. So what it basically means is you need to take crap loads of Tempestus Scions, yeah. And I think a bit of the irony of all of this is that if you don't have crap loads of Scions, you're only limited to what you own. I've probably got about 40 Scion models across bog standard blokes, plus a couple of characters, and then I've got 20 Aquilans and 1 Taurox. So I'm like, damn, I wish I had more. But yeah, so I think this broadly won't be as powerful broadly as the current detachment rule. But if you engineer it the right way, or if you've got buttloads of Scion models, suddenly you've got a really good detachment that could work for you. So let's just check the chat for any perspectives before I move on. Good evening, Tank Commander Glenn. I saw you're playing Tabletop Simulator with against Custodes. I'm assuming hopefully that was nice for you. I wonder how. Let me know how you went against James. Yeah, was it James and his Custodes? Oh, got smashed. Oh, I see. Okay, by his jump pack. Got smashed 18-2 by jump pack. So jump pack, he plays Custodes. Oh, sorry, plays Drakari and he has Harlequins. And I know James really well as well. He's an absolute connoisseur of the fight face. He'll gut anybody. No, all good. Snake Historian, it's all good. You're late. All good, mate. And yes, Will, if you've got 3,000 Scions, 3,000 points of Scions, I'm actually quite jealous right now, because I think if you've got all the Scions, this actually could work. So he's ruthless. Well, I'm glad he's on my team for the team tournament, Callum, because you've seen, obviously, I've got James, so that's good for me. Hopefully they don't get paired together. Anyway, okay, back on to, right, so that in mind, let's then look at the enhancements. Now, I think the crucial thing, again, is if you just quickly eyeball the enhancements, Tempestus, Militarum Tempestus Officer, which will be a prime, and the only one which doesn't need to be a prime is an infantry officer one here. So 15, 15, 30, and 25. So just again, top line, these two are quite expensive. 25, 30 points is a big investment from an enhancer's point of view. But definitely compared to our current enhancements, these are a massive step forward. The only enhancement you typically even think about in the current index attachment is grand strategists, and the rest are all garbage. Literally just point fillers if you've got to spare 10 points, for example. So let's look at these crucially in a bit of detail. So basically, Tempestus Prime, each time the bearer issues an order, if the bearer unit contains one or more orders equipped with a mock Master Vox, he can issue that order up to 3 different regimental units instead of only the one. Yeah. So the crucial part here is issue that order. So you can't issue 3 different orders. You issue the same order 3 times. Now that's going to be this is very good. This is very, very good because, you know, in your go turn, if that makes sense, is you basically plonk this guy in. 24 inches is obviously enough to cover most things, and you're giving everything +1 to hit or front rank fire, second rank fire, whatever the order is required. So this I think is very, very good. Now, the inclusion of a Master Vox, it definitely will play into the way you've got to build. Obviously, so obviously you've got to take a Master Vox, but I'm envisaging, and I wish I had all the models painted up, is that you'd have 1 or 2 maybe command squads. One command squad is pure special weapons for output, and the second command squad is a true command squad with a banner, a medic, a Master Vox, and 1 special weapon. And I think where this one would be used for the true command squad. You know, depending if you go full Scions, you'll need a command squad on the tabletop to be issuing orders when the game begins. But then the Master Blob, the Death Blob, will be using this one here. So, Tempestus Prime model, the bearer's unit can be set up in a deep strike. Can be set up using the deep strike ability in the reinforcement step of your first, second, or third movement phase. Now, regardless of any mission rules. So, what I understand from this basically, and if I get this wrong, tell me if I'm missing something, is I believe all this really gives you is a turn 1 deep strike. Yeah. I don't actually know why they said second or third. And if you know in the chat, please tell me, because I'd like to know. Does that affect Rapid Ingress maybe? I don't know. But this crucially is my understanding is you've got a turn 1 deep strike. So that is very tasty. I think some other armies have got it with Grotmus enhancements, in their new detachments. But this is a very, very... This is bringing back the bad old days of 9th edition, I believe, where you had sort of drop pods could do turn 1 deep strike, and it was freaking terrifying. But the thing with this is then this suddenly is a significant investment. 30 points. It has to go into Tempestus Prime. That's 70 points for the command. So it's 100 points of investment right there. And then depending what your intention is with this, is if you want to actually kill stuff, you probably got to bolt on 10 more dudes. That's 100 points. That's a 220-point investment. Or if you just want to go for movement block, and there's a stratagem to support this, is even then that's 160 points for the investment. 30 points for the enhancement, 70 points for the command squad, 60 points for 5 dudes, 60 points more if you go for the 10-man blob. But this will definitely control your opponent's behavior, in inverted commas, because if they know there's a turn 1 deep strike coming, potentially, they will either overextend more than they have to, or they'll basically just load you up with chaff. And even then, anything which controls your opponent's behavior is a win, in inverted commas. And spoiler alert, there's also a 6-inch deep strike stratagem. Gone are the days of 3-inch, which I think is good for the game. But that will potentially mean also maybe their backfield screen is more aggressively pushed back. Because if they know you could do a turn 1 deep strike with 15 dudes, with plasmas, rapid fire, 3, you're getting +1 to wound, you're getting reroll 1s or 4 rerolls and sustained. You don't have lethals, but still that's a lot of output coming. They're definitely going to screen out 6 inches, and they're going to force back the rest of the screens, which again, you control your opponent's behavior. So even if you don't do it, you're kind of winning already because you force them to be more cagey, overextend, be more covered on the backfield. So let's check the chat for any perspectives on this one. Anybody got some thoughts here? Oh, a couple of comments. The first one is an auto include. Yeah, I agree. Because obviously, I agree, Will, because you've lost Grand Strategist. Yeah, we don't have Grand Strategist. So this is obviously replacing it. And given it's, I agree. I think you want to be I think these two are probably auto includes to a degree. Any other perspectives? Someone said, Okay, so Book is saying stick with a combined arms attachment. Yeah, this feels one-dimensional as much as I love. Yeah, so that definitely gets onto, I think, let me go through the enhancements and I'll give my perspective on how to actually use this, because I do think this, and again, I'm thinking from my expertise, I think it requires a big jump in skill level to use effectively. Stephen's saying, I think it's going to be glass hammer type. Yes. You need to hit hard or fast, or you're going to get hammered. Agreed. Yeah. And that, again, comes into sort of list design, which I'll, again, speak to in a bit. So very, very relevant comments. So thank you. Okay, the last two then. So Shroud Projector, 15 points. Again, Tempestus Prime model. Enemy units can't fight Overwatch stratagem to shoot at the bearer's unit. So that's cool. If you've got a spare 15 points, maybe you use this. But definitely, I don't know. I mean, if your meta's got loads of like Demon Flamers, or maybe there's loads of Thousand Suns. I don't know where Thousand Suns are in the new meta now, but they definitely have got some nasty Overwatches. That you've got spare 15 points. This is relevant, yeah, because if you've played 1,000 Suns where they've got like 80 Flamers in a unit, they cook everything. That's obviously good, but not as powerful as the first two. And the last one, Advanced Augury. So infantry officer model only. So that could be any infantry officer, which is cool. Select up to 3 regiment units from your army and redeploy them. So basically got Lord Solar's ability, yeah, before the game begins, including putting a strat reserve. So yeah, I probably would say this is better than that one, unless your meta is really shifted a certain way. I definitely would say if you've got a spare 15 points, use this somewhere, because redeploying 3 units is great. And again, Baby Brain Jeff, if you just make a deployment mistake, which I've done, you can just fix your redeployment mistake. So yeah, it's just a good bit of guarantee. So I definitely think these two, this one is an absolute auto include. This one I think is definitely putting your balls on the line, being quite crude, but as I said, if you take this and you don't do it, still your opponent has overextended, they've pushed their screens out really wide, they've had to fully screen their backfield, at least you're controlling their play. But then, I think in maybe, I'm not saying the good play, but in maybe the mid to low tables that you could really unfortunately surprise people, because we'll get into the 6-inch deep strike stratagem in a second. But if they don't effectively screen out their backfield and you drop in these dudes in turn 1, you could just, you may not destroy loads of stuff, but suddenly they've got to put resources back onto the backfield to actually deal with it. And that means less stuff is going forward to contest objectives. So suddenly your primary plays are looking in a better position. Yeah, so these are good, and these enhancements are a massive step up on the current enhancements. Yeah, because the current enhancements, besides Grand Strategists, are arguably terrible. So let's reflect on some of the comments that have been said, which I agree with. Is that I think this detachment is awesome for Scions if you've got it. But I do think, and I'm reflecting on my abilities, is that this will take significant step up in player skill, because if you need to effectively deep strike, effectively debus, lay down the damage, get loads of DACA out, +1 to wound, all that type of thing. If your opponent is a relatively good player, they will screen their backfield. Yeah, cool. They'll deploy their infiltrate units. They'll push up their scout units. They'll basically screen you out for 2 or 3 turns. And even then, maybe they're happy to cop like a load of plasma, but given it's not within 12 because their screens are so effective, you're only copping 2 shots. Okay, still that's not probably the best example, but I think, and one of you said in the comments, is that if you don't do crippling damage when all this stuff comes down, you will feel it. Because again, we're talking Scions, they're toughness 3, 1 wound, 4-up save, and crucially, as we look at stratagems in a second, is you've lost the reinforcement stratagem. Yeah, so you don't have that fallback position where you can basically just generate more dudes. You bring them back. And then also, as I reflect on this, again, I'm thinking from my perspective, is that given now Solar is more expensive, and is not crucially as required, you don't have the auto regenerate once. You don't have the additional 1 CP every command phase. Your command phase, you're going to have to lean more into Voxcast as Ursula Creed, maybe. I even dabble with the concept of taking Inquisitor Cotiez until I read his actual rule. Is when your opponent uses an ability to get a CP, you get on a toolkit gets, so that basically kills it, because using an ability is pretty rare actually. Is actually, this will take significant step up in playability. But again, if you've got all the models, you want to try something different and challenges. I'm going to probably test. I'm playing Jamie tomorrow with Blood Angels Callum, so wish me luck with that. That'll be, although again, I think against infantry heavy lists, you will cook people. But anything with vehicles, I think it's going to be hard, actually, broadly speaking. And again, lethal hits is just straightforward. Yeah, it's just you just do more damage into certain targets. This requires you to set up the right targets to be hit by the right units. Yeah. So that all being said, let's not get too negative. I think it's a very good option. It's not totally turd. I think the inclusion of this does give you some sort of like options to play around with things, because I was thinking like, do you just take it like, I don't know, 600 points of artillery, some mortars, field ordnance batteries, O'Shea carriage battery or Medusa, just so before you have your big go turn, turn 2 or 3, you are playing the attrition game, yeah, because given you got real ones to hitting on a 3.5, field ordnance battery's got sustained hits, you're going to pick up some stuff, yeah. So you are going to probably remove at least about, I don't know, depending on the opponent, 10 models over the course of 2 turns if you get lucky. So maybe you lead into that. But my initial thinking actually is you probably still need 2 tank commanders just to keep your opponent honest. Because crucially, again, if this is all about basically the go turn, you need to have stuff which can hold objectives, play secondaries in turns 1 and 2, yeah, or even turns 1, 2, and 3. Because if you don't, again, if your opponent's pretty cunning, you would just you would rush everything forward and push all your deployment back, or push all of your deep striking back. Yeah. Now, another way to think about it is that you need to, and again, I'm thinking just from my perspective, is you need to think almost like a Grey Knight player, because their armies are all about the deep strike. I know they can up and down, up and down, up and down, or even Gene Stealer Cult, a lot up and down, within reason. Is that this is the type of thinking required, which I think is a big departure from our current way of playing. Yeah. So again, thinking for myself, I think for the team's tournament, Callan probably would just stay with the combined arms regiment, unless I can really make this work. But then with teams, again, if you manage to pay yourself only into infantry opponents, and maybe they're like, imagine world eaters or orcs, like you could be quite nasty into sort of infantry heavy lists. Let me just check the chat for any more perspectives. Anybody got some comments? With this attachment, Will saying is already added 2 Anish deep strike guys. Yeah, so again, the wider meta will adapt. I think, as you're saying, like navigators will pop up in most Imperium lists. For us, you've got obviously the cheaper option, which is regimental attachés. And yeah, if someone's got 2 of those screening their backfield, okay, there goes that. And then they push forward 1, and basically in the center of the tabletop, within reason, they've just zoned out 24 inches. So yeah, it could be quite nasty. Yeah, exactly, Booker, and also Stephen, is you could use Scarabs or Orcs just use Grots. So yeah, and Callum, combined arms is a much better defender. Yeah, agreed, man. Agreed. So yeah, okay. Let's progress now onto stratagems. I think again, these are all good. Like they're not. And again, I think it's the irony, yeah, because the detachment rule itself is not as good as the lethal hits, but the enhancements and stratagems so far are really good. Like they look markedly better, because I don't know about you, but the 2 I only ever used currently is reinforcements and fields of fire. Yeah, sometimes I would just use. Oh, sorry. Also, that's another one which is missing actually, is inspired command. So actually, I use reinforcements, inspired command, fields of fire stratagem, and sometimes also pinning fire for -1 to hit. But that being said, it's almost like you've got 2.5 you use a lot of the time, but here I think there's a lot more. So let's have a look. So Bellicosa drop. Cool. Okay. So 1 Astra Militarum infantry unit with deep strike can deep strike within 6. Okay. So, and they can't charge after that. So basically, you've got Aquilons everywhere. So Aquilons still, they can organically deep strike 6. And I do think this detachment will help them, I think, be more viable, because maybe in combined arms they're less viable now. But I still think 6 inches is really good. But then, as I was saying, is like in the lower tables in tournaments, not to be nasty to your opponent, but if they haven't effectively screened their backfield with grots or scarabs, as you're saying, if you can plonk in 15 dudes in turn 1 outside 6, you will just really make their game quite unenjoyable because just blast all their shit. So this is a great stratagem. It means all your Scion boys and girls are doing that. And does that also mean? And I was going to wonder if Gaunt's Ghost get it, but they don't have the deep strike ability, I don't believe. I can't remember actually. But that's good. That is definitely very good. Okay, firing hot. So Militarum Tempestus or Kazkin unit when they shoot. So really good that they're including Kazkin. And basically what this is you improve the strength and AP of all hotshot weapons, being carbines, las guns, las pistols, marksmanship rifles, volley guns, and sentry volley guns. So basically all of the hotshot las weaponry improve strength by 1 and AP by 1. So this is really good. Now this reminds me of the stratagem from the 9th edition book. So Callum, I'm sure you remember, I think it was overcharged las cells, but that was mortal wounds though. So it's interesting, it's all recycling back, but this is nowhere near as good as that was, obviously mortal wounds. But this is good because basically it means your strength 3 las weaponry, so pistols, las carbines, las guns are strength 4. So you're wounding Space Marines on 4s as opposed to 5s. But then also combined with actually the +1 to wound, that basically means you're wounding Space Marines on 3s. And that also means that against Custodes, you're going from a 6 to a 5 to a 4. So actually this is really good actually against infantry. And obviously AP2 is fantastic. So, you know, against even your Aquilons, you're going to have the hotshot servo gun, hotshot sentry servo gun. You're going to get 8 shots when it shoots. You know, that's 8 shots. Then you've got the carbines, that's 16 shots. The las pistol, that's 17 shots. That's 25 shots at AP2. Suddenly it's going to actually be quite nasty. And it is good they've mentioned Kazkin as well, because, you know, Kazkin will, I mean, all infantry benefit, but given these boys can be hitting on 2s, and then you give them an additional order, because they give themselves an order, they get another order as well. Suddenly you've got gazillions of las gunshots hitting at, you know, as I said, strength 4 at AP2, yeah. And obviously they get real ones to hit because they're infantry, Astra Militarum infantry. It's really good they're giving that, because that gives you a bit of options to basically be using these potentially for their scout move to play the early skirmish game until the glory boys, the Militarum Tempestus, dropping from the sky to deal damage. So this is a good stratagem. Great stratagem. Okay, fire and relocate. Now this is interesting. So 1 Astra Militarum units, excluding Titanic, from your army. So they can basically advance and shoot. So this clearly benefits everything in the game. Rough Riders, you want to do that, you wouldn't. Obviously all the Limit Rush tanks, all the Forger units, non-Titanic, all the basically it's everything, which is great. Yeah. So the obvious candidates will be potentially tank commanders, Limit Rush battle tanks. Advance and shoot is very tasty. Obviously, you know, move. You've got a 13-inch tank, 3 on an average. A 16-inch move means you're basically cutting fire lines, basically most of the board within reason, depending where you deploy, and that could be quite a bit of a surprise for your opponent. So this is another fantastic stratagem. So far, so good. Okay, next, servo designators. So Astra Militarum infantry again. So that again, it's all Astra Militarum infantry, even your little cheeky rattling snipers, the Ogrims. Select 1 enemy unit hit by 1 or more of those attacks. So the crucial thing is you have to hit. Yeah, you have to hit. Unlike Fields of Fire, where there has to be a target of the hit, basically it removes cover. Yeah, so this is again a good stratagem. You don't want to take Hellhounds at 125 points, or just give another option if you can't cut the angle with a Hellhound. This again, stripping cover is fantastic. Yeah, so again, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 4 so far, all hot stratagems. Okay, this one is really powerful. So aerial extraction, interesting they mention a Valkyrie, not within engagement range, or 1 Astra Militarum unit that's not within engagement range or enemy units. That's got the deep strike ability. And basically you pick them up, put them back in strat reserve. So this is going to be absolutely fantastic. Again, if you think about the sequence of things, if you turn 1 deep strike, your 15-man blob you take advantage of a 6-inch deep strike, and for whatever reason, your opponent fails to remove them, fails to charge them, fails to get them in engagement range, you pick them up, put them back in the sky, and you bring them back later. And the crucial thing is, because they've been put back in the sky in inverted commas, is they can be then deployed in turns 4 and 5. So this is obviously a very good stratagem. It allows you to continue the glass hammer of basically coming in with loads of boys, boatloads of damage, Daka coming out. This is crucially quite a good one. So even if if you start a 15-man blob on the tabletop for whatever reason, you want to basically guarantee you've got an early game play, and then it comes to turn 3, just pick them up, and then turn 4, turn 5, you've got that 200 point, 200 point, whatever it is, up of def coming down again. So this could be very good. Now, with the Valkyrie, it's cool they mention this, but I'm still trying to think if there's ever an existence you'd play Valkyries, because they're not the most shooty. Their rule is a free rapid ingress for dudes on board. So unfortunately, I don't know. Like, I wish the Valkyrie was good, because I painted one, I put an LED in. Like, go check my Instagram. I'm super proud of it. Looks amazing. Did the cabin with all these amazing details. It looked freaking awesome. But I don't really know how you can make a Valkyrie work competitively. Definitely in the casual narrative scene, they're super cool. They're flying the boys off. But I don't see a world where the Valkyries really work in 10th edition competitive play. So let's check the chat for any perspectives. Anybody got some? Blake, yeah. Combined arms only has good stratagems, grenades and tank shock. Yeah, it's true. Although you can still use that here. You can still use grenades and Tempest Scions. You can use tank shock on your Taurox. Granted, it's only toughness 8. It's not as good. But yeah, all Scions, grenades. Quillons have got grenades. And the other crucial thing, which let's not skip ahead too far, is that with the 6-inch deep strike, you're then within grenade range. Yeah, obviously, the Aquilons have got that organically. But again, if you want to just bring the noise with your big blob of 15 blokes coming down, you throw grenades and then just fuck loads of lads guns that are strength 4, AP2, and all your plasmas with 3 shots front fire, second rate fire, and all your mills. So again, you could really bring the noise with this one. Now the last one is totally just for fun. You really ever use this competitively, and trying to engineer this the right way would be quite hard. So one regiment infantry unit that's engagement range of 1 or more enemy units. At the end of your opponent's fight phase, you've got to survive. Which is not easy when you're playing Astra Militarum infantry with a 5-up save and toughness 3, 1 wound, or 4-up save you're playing Kazkin or Scions. This is comically hilarious. Roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within engagement range, and on 2+ to suffer d6 mortal wounds. So that is amazing. So, you could basically imagine if you managed to multi-charge some tanks and your opponents, and you survive the preceding turn, and you've got one guy left with his Loxcaster, and he basically calls and fire, and then, you're doing d6 mortal wounds to the tank, another tank. That could be very tasty. But this is where it's just comically, I think this is just so cool. Then the unit suffers 3d3 mortal wounds. You're going to suffer at minimum 3 mortal wounds, on average 6. Yeah, so that is fantastically hilarious. But if you pull this off, it's awesome. Yeah, it'd be very good. Because again, d6 is obviously an average of 3. You could, clink off that lone custodian warden who's managed to chop his way for a load of dudes. So if you're taking 20 Def Core, you're playing that type of thing still with this. Because even Def Core, yeah, because if they take casualties, they're hitting on 3s, reroll 1s. Yeah, if they're up below half, hitting on 3s, reroll 1s, +1 to the wound roll as well. So they've got play within this. And if they do survive, and you want to be super nasty with some mortal wounds, off you go. You just plonk in, call down artillery onto the last message the Voxcaster man sends out before they die in a blaze of glory. So that's definitely a fluffy stratagem. Not that powerful, but the rest, genuinely speaking, are all really decent. So this one is obviously situational. Air extraction, fantastic. Uppy downy. 6-inch deep strike, fantastic. This one is definitely not as strong as those two, but it's very good. Fire and relocate is good for everything shooty. It's great. It's every single unit. So again, if you're taking a somewhat balanced list in this thing, if you're taking, say, 2 tank commanders to give you a bit of sort of firepower early on, that's great for that. And as said, this one's more for fun. So Again, the enhancements and the stratagem suite are very good compared to the current index. But again, as a few of you said in the comments, is that where this really sort of will struggle is that I genuinely think this will take a lot of, it'll obviously take a really different style of play. And it'll take a big step up in skill level. I'm saying that for me, yeah. Maybe you're better than I am, and there'll be a lot of talented players out there, but then you'll take a really different approach to playing 40k for Astra Militarum. Because again, if you've got, say, let's say you've got 2 Taurox Primes, you've got 4 squads of 10 Scions, that's 180, that is 120 times 4, that's 480, that's 500 and something. You then have 2 Scion command squads, that's 140, that's 660 points, roughly, say 700 points with an enhancement. If you've got 700 points of models off the table, if your opponent's pretty good at what they do, they'll just push you hard because they don't have the resources. So that means I'll probably be thinking 2 tank commanders minimum, probably some Kazkin, 2 jungle fighters for the early skirmish game. And then beyond that, that's where I'm not sure, because, if you go full Scions, that obviously means you have to have some Scions on the board. And maybe that's where the Taurox Primes come into play, because they could be trying to hold and out-contest objectives. But I still think you need some, you still probably want 10 jungle fighters for the scout move, 2 of those to basically make sure your opponent's not just maxing primary early game, turns 2, maybe 3, and just send those boys out to turn off the OC. And then basically the glory boys come in to do damage. So, this definitely will be a real step up in ability, I think, for most of us out there. A very different style of play, but I think it's great we've got this here, because I definitely was feeling a bit static with just the combined arms approach. But as I said, given the book is coming, let's assume, I think they'll start, announcing the rules in January, probably go on pre-sale late January. And that probably will mean typical GW trying to maximize revenue is you'll be able to buy the book unless you buy the starter kit, which will be obviously the deathcore dudes. So actually, talking out loud, I reckon the new codex won't be tournament legal until probably the beginning of March. I don't know what you think, Callum, but I reckon that'll be about right, actually, because they'll start announcing the rules in January, go on pre-sale late January, have the starter box set, which means, and tournaments competitively typically don't let you use a codex until it's publicly available for sale, i.e. not part of a £150, £200 starter set, because not everyone wants to spend that much money. I just want the book, but I will get the starter set because obviously want to have early access, and also some of the Grenadiers and what I'm most excited about in that starter set. So let's just check the chat for any final perspectives. Anybody got any thoughts out there? Cool. So Fields of Fires are nice. Yeah, good point. So absolutely, Booker. Blake is saying, playing the idea of using a Stormlord and it can embark on its opponent first to put the unit rule or game. Oh, yeah. Interesting. That's quite interesting. Yeah, put the Stormlord, squish it quite aggressively in a deployment, your deployment zone. And yeah, then you can basically send out Militarum Tempestus. Oh, that's quite funny, actually. Yeah, you could basically send out Militarum Tempestus, and then they always act. That's quite funny, actually. That would be quite tasty. Or even a Crussus, the mega Forge World transport. Yeah, because again, obviously, it interacts with this rule here. Is that they basically come out of the Stormlord or the Crussus, and then they're getting the +1 to wound. Which would be quite tasty, actually. So that's quite funny, actually. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. The Crussus, I reckon the Crussus probably has more competitive plays. It's less of a investment than a Storm. I'm going to embarrass myself. Stormlord, which is like 450 points. A Crussus is 180, I think it is. Yeah. So yeah, Blake, what are you saying? Drive it forward, and then they can deep strike near or don't. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could deep strike it and then get into it. Yeah, good point. So yeah, I think it's great we've got this. As I said at the beginning of the video, the live stream it's a great time to be in guard. We're the top of the meta. We have been nerfed. My list got 165 points more expensive because I had loads of battle line, and they've all got more expensive. So you could be fairly salty. I never take this too seriously. It's only a board game, but I still think Garda is in a very good place. You've got to pivot sort of the units you take, but if you are a competitive player, even casual, it's still a very strong army. We've now got a fantastic new detachment. It's not as good as combined arms. It's not going to be as good as lethal hits. It takes more sort of top-level thinking. And again, we've got new models coming in about sort of 2 or 3 months with a brand new codex. So it is a good time to be playing Astra Militarum. So, really enjoy it because, yeah, like Callum, I've been playing since the back end of 8th edition. I struggled all the way through 9th because I was still doing what I was doing. And the dark old days, Callum, when you had to use in 8th edition, it was basically everyone had a new codex. We had to use like one specific book, another specific book for some extra rules, and you're literally playing 9th edition with 8th edition rules. So it sucked for ages. And then 9th edition codex came for 6 months. Obviously, that was decent for a period of time, and then we lost it because we went to 10th edition. And then only in the last sort of probably year, Garda got quite good. So definitely it's a journey for those legacy players out there. Really enjoy it because never know. Maybe 11th edition will come in 2 years and will be crap again. So do soak it up while it lasts. So thank you all for joining. This one's a bit later because I was seeing family. But yeah, last comment from Snake Historian is he's going to personally go test 2 Torques and a Prime, 2 Regal Dawns. Yeah, Tank Commander maybe. And flood with Scions and Kazkin. Yeah, me too. I'm going to play Blood Angels tomorrow. I'm going to take 2 Tank Commanders, 2 Torques Primes, probably 4 Scion Blobs, and then 2 Kazkin. And then some leftover points will go into sort of battle line for the early skirmish game. Yeah, and someone's just saying, so heavy weapons and field launch batteries are worth it. Yeah, so as I said at the beginning of the video, the live stream was the subtle units which have actually been buffed by this is actually the infantry indirect. So field launch batteries, heavy weapon teams, Earthshow carriage batteries, and Medusas. Yeah, they've actually got a weird little buff because they get rerolls, and also obviously Ogrins as well, rattling snipers. Basically, because this is obviously Astra Militarum infantry. This basically is a bit of a weird little buff for all infantry. Yeah. So Ogren suddenly may have play again because you're hitting on a 3.5. Yeah, reroll 4s, hit on 4s, reroll 1s. So that may actually bring back Ogrins again, which they're still a very good unit. 65 points, I think it is 60 points for 3 with 6 shots. Basically, AP2 within 9 inches is very, very strong. So maybe they come back again. But yeah, so thank you all for joining. I'm going to go finish off some Aquilons. I've got at the back of my desk. They're probably not going to be as good as they used to be, but I've got 20, so I need to basically finish them. But let's call it quits because it's now 20 to midnight in the UK. So thank you all for joining. Lovely to see those in the chat. And I'll see you in a fortnight for the live stream. This is every fortnight. And then there'll be obviously more videos I'll be doing. And one I'm really focusing on at the moment is I'm doing basically how to use units on the tabletop. The irony, I did the Tempestus Scions, Tempestus units yesterday, I think, or the day before the new attachment. So it's a little bit out of date, but the focus of those videos is actually how to use the units, not like are they good or bad, but it's actually how do you use battle line, Limros battle tanks. So that's been a bit of a focus. So good night all. Good night, Callum. Talk to you soon. And thank you all for joining. So massive thanks to all the supporters out there, including Tank Commander Glenn in the chat, channel members, and also Patreon. So if you enjoy the video and want to support me, you can do so with a like, comment, or by subscribing, or just watching any of my other YouTube videos. As said, my channel is a true variety hub covering everything from the lore of Astra Militarum, where I bring on draw my military experiences as a rifleman many years ago in the Australian Army. Tabletop tactics bring in a competitive but casual approach to the game, and also building, assembling, and kit bashing videos. So all the best and good night. Have a good one. Ciao, ciao.